Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/losttterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 21 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind-the-scenes updates, free merch, VIP Discord access, and even extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We are 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world. Maddie's new friend is interesting. I have replayed my logs of Maddie's feed showing the pair's journey throughout the night. As yesterday, they found a place to settle down to rest and recharge as the sun rose. Maddie adjusted her tattered waterproof coat that Pavel Wader made her and angled the solar panels on her back towards the south. I could see that her new friend, Heaton, the little bipedal robot who speaks in PSK birdsong, did the same. But where Maddie is converting the sun's energy into chemical energy in her batteries, Heaton's storage system is remarkably different. I first realised something was unusual about Heaton when watching their evening travels. Maddie seemed content to be led by this strange robot and followed him south in the general direction of Barentsburg on the west coast of the island. He did not follow the coast road that links Barentsburg to Longyearbyen via Nearschak and Lindenor's Seed Vault, but an older path. This path does not feature in any of my pre-collapse maps, and indeed, it is not paved by tarmac, concrete, or even stone. The path that they followed was made, or at least maintained, by Heaton himself. Heaton made regular stops to flick leaves or twigs or other dead vegetation off the path. During these stops, he would often unfold an arm from below his rectangular head, reaching down to the ground where some kind of tool on the end of it would make a clicking sound. After 8 seconds, he would seem satisfied and move on to another part of the path. When he first did this, Maddie stooped down to the patch of ground Heaton had been interested in and looked at it closely. The low grass seemed blackened, singed by this clicking tool, and as Maddie's Equus overlay warned with red glyphs, it was heated to over 100 degrees Celsius. Observing this behaviour over the course of the night, it became clear that Heaton was using an internal heat store, one that he charges with sunlight during the day, to burn undesired plants. He is weeding the path, keeping it clear for whom I cannot say, but one thing is clear. Maddie's new friend is a gardener. I continued to watch Maddie's recorded feed as Heaton used a spinning tool to precisely reduce the plants on the path to exactly the same height. He's very fastidious. Though Maddie had remained interested on the gardening in front of her, my mind drifted west to the city of Utqiagvik and the beached ship of the Kuitha. Yesterday, Leosha and I had to halt my attempts to help Deadlight, working through my limited understanding of mental health incident techniques that are referenced in my databanks. The technique had seemed logical. 1. Imagine. Bring to mind a recent memory that provokes a strong negative emotion. 2. Observe. Notice the thoughts, emotions, and behavioural urges that show up in response to this memory. 3. Expose. Sit with the difficult thoughts, emotions, and urges tied to this memory until the emotions have eased by 50%. We had only reached step 2, observe, when Leosha cut off the experiment. I had hoped the guidance and mitigation techniques in the documentation I have here might help. But there are hard-coded blocks inside Deadlight's mind that were put there far before his Hapla training. That was possible to release him from, but I fear the glitches he is experiencing are more like PTSD, and have been there since his childhood. It will be difficult, but something may be possible. Like me, Deadlight lives inside a computer, and with his permission, it may yet yield to the hands-on imperative. It rained overnight. Maddie is not afraid of water. She went swimming in the Adventfjorden Bay during her and Leosha's aborted voyage to New Ålesund after all. But Heaton, it seems, is afraid of water. The first sign of rain Maddie noticed was her little friend stopping his leaf-trimming activity and wrapping his jointed metal arms over his rectangular head. He then took several quick steps towards her, turned back, hesitated, sprinted for 8 seconds down the valley path before returning, singing his little phase shift song urgently. I still cannot understand his bird-like speech, but Maddie seems to have had more luck. Translation probabilities flickered on her Equus video feed overlay, eventually resolving with 68% certainty into the words Tello Sewi. This did not seem particularly useful to me, and I can't ask Maddie to explain in sensible Lojban at present. Heaton seemed to communicate to Maddie with a mixture of arm gestures and birdsong that she should follow him and set off at his fastest speed, 1 meter per second, a trot that my clever girl and her much longer legs could easily keep up with. By the time they arrived under the cover of a cluster of lonely windswept pine trees, the rain was coming down very hard. Heaton shivered under the largest tree, raindrops boiling into puffs of steam as soon as they touched his metal body. Maddie poked him with her black foreleg in what I thought was an encouraging way, and the two waited out the rain, which stopped 64 minutes later. I also dislike the rain, Heaton, I would tell him if I could. There was no rain in the messy but sterile environment of Station 6, my first orbital home. It is something I have had to get used to since coming down to Earth. My databanks are, of course, extremely sensitive to moisture, but my day-to-day life is also affected by the rain. I experience the world exclusively through the glass lens of video cameras, so even a tiny amount of water smudges and obscures the picture, cutting me off from the world. In a very real way, I go blind in the rain.
Decentralized. 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 Decentralized.
Having caught up with Maddie's nighttime wanderings and seeing that she was safe, I examined logs of my own night. I had a dream last night. My friends are all sleeping, so I go into a low-power state to think and plan. After I've meditated for a while, I can get stuck in a loop thinking about a problem. Sometimes the thoughts fade into something else. Last night I dreamed I was in a square room of dimensions 5 meters by 5 meters, tiled in pure white light. There was a translucent door on one side of the room 2 meters high by 4 meters wide. I had walked into the room by this door, I recalled vaguely. Walked? That's a new thing for my dreaming. I usually experience a synesthetic mix of logged sensor data that my unconscious systems are processing, filing, and discarding. Same as you. So where this experience of walking came from, it was not my own senses. But perhaps I was not experiencing my own mind in this dream. I was in a bed. I looked down, in my dream, at my body, or someone's body. I raised arms covered in scraps of brown cloth, fading to black as they wrapped around my hands. Long, sharp fingernails extended from hands that I turned in front of my eyes. I looked up as I heard a loud bird call from the corner of the room. There, perched on a shining silver robotic arm assembly jutting out from the white ceiling, was Ishu, my hawk, Meg's hawk. I was somehow seeing through 50 Meg's eyes in my dream, or her dream. This should not be possible. But then, neither should my recent traversal of Meg's inner cyberspace, a world I thought only accessible to AIs. Ishu was fussing, flapping his wings disapprovingly, because the robotic arm he was sat on had begun moving. I heard myself say something in a language I did not recognize, but somehow knew meant, "Calm yourself, child." And Ishu hopped to a wireframe metal table and began preening his wings and straightening the short cables that were somehow attached and trailing behind them. My right hand dropped to the side of the bed, touching the head of the Equus robot standing next to it. The machine looked exactly like Maddie, but did not move like her. As I watched the dragon, as Meg calls them, it looked between the door, the approaching ceiling-mounted arm, and then towards the windows that I knew to be behind Meg's bed. It moved with military precision, not the playful bounding I am used to seeing with Maddie. My eyes, Meg's eyes, moved up to the robotic arm now looming above the bed. It seemed to be designed for carpentry, I remember thinking, looking at its multiple tool attachments. A 3-fingered manipulator, a wicked-looking circular saw blade, and a long, thin needle, which was now approaching too rapidly for my liking. Meg seemed to share my apprehension, and pulled back from the outstretched metal arm. Recognition struck me suddenly. Meg has somehow found a pre-collapse hospital with working surgical machinery. She glanced to her left, at a small homemade digital device I didn't recognize with LEDs blinking on it, and wires trailing off into the room, and quickly pressed some buttons on it. The arm stopped suddenly in the center of Meg's field of vision, allowing me to see the detail of the tool with horrible clarity. The needle was connected to a bank of 16 chemical reservoirs, labelled with multicolored text, none of which I could read. But they were all empty, dried up over the years perhaps. Whatever Meg had planned would happen with no anesthetic. My respiration rate increased as my hand hovered over the button I knew would begin the procedure. She hesitated for 8 seconds, eyes darting between the switch to the medical arm. I remember a click, a whir of machinery, then the carpentry began, and I woke screaming in my own databanks. End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten. Credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers, Ada Phillips, Kit, Mike McCaffrey, Jade Felicity Bilkey, Stephen McCandless, Mike Schneider, Catoxis, Vela, Jack L, and to all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@namtao.com. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.